Wind 300 at 16, runway 31 left, clear for land.
Mirroring its impact on aviation, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on airline companies. Due to travel restrictions and a slump in demand among travelers, several airlines have declared bankruptcy, with some ceasing operations, while other airlines reported historic reductions in flights, as well as accelerating retirements of certain types, such as a Boeing 747 or the Airbus A340. By the 8th of October 2020, 43 commercial airlines had gone bankrupt, and many more were expected to follow. Ryanair sent an internal memo informing staff that it may require them to take unpaid leave, due to alterations in flight scheduling. Scandinavian Airlines has received a payment guarantee of 3 billion Swedish kroner by the governments of Denmark and Sweden to get through the crisis. Most flights scheduled for April have been cancelled. On the 28th of April, SAS announced that 5,000 employees would be laid off. Due to travel restrictions, Scoot only flew to 2 cities in April and May 2020, Hong Kong and Perth. On the 20th of May 2020, Scoot announced it would expand flight operations in June to 6 cities: Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Ipoh, Kuching, Penang and Perth. Shoreline Aviation ceased operations on the 1st of April 2020. During the pandemic in Nepal, Sri Airlines carried out charter flights to Singapore, marking the airline's international flight debut. Singapore Airlines had to cut 96% of its flights up to end April, and ground the majority of its air fleet on the 23rd of March 2020. Its management also took a pay cut, and staff up to certain management levels had to take unpaid leave. Shares also dropped to its lowest since 1998 to the extent that they had to halt trading. In response, the Singapore government injected up to 19 billion Singapore dollars for the flag carrier. Whereas its majority shareholder said it would underwrite the sale of shares and convertible bonds for up to 15 billion Singapore dollars. On the 26th of April, Singapore Airlines flew their fleet of Airbus A340 aircraft to Alice Springs in Australia's Northern Territory for indefinite long-term storage. On the 13th of February 2020, South African Express, owned by South African Airways, entered the business rescue process, a local form of bankruptcy protection. On the 18th of March 2020, the airline suspended all operations due to the virus. On the 28th of April 2020, the business rescue practitioners submitted an application to the Pretoria High Court for the liquidation of the airline. The court approved a provisional liquidation, with stakeholders being given until the 9th of June 2020 to voice objections, before a final dissolution of the company. Southwest Airlines suspended about 40% of its flights in late March, and stored 50 Boeing 737 aircraft. CEO Gary C. Kelly denied that the airline planned to furlough pilots or declare bankruptcy. On the 7th of April, Southwest announced the cancellation of about 50% of its flights through late June. By the 28th of April, Southwest had parked 350 of its 742 aircraft, negotiated the delay of many anticipated Boeing 737 MAX deliveries, and was reporting daily losses of at least $30 million. In July 2020, around 1/3 of Southwest's employees had expressed interest taking early retirement or long-term leave, and the company launched voluntary separation and extended time off programs. Over 16,800 employees signed up. On the 5th of October 2020, Kelly announced pay cuts of 10% for non-union employees and 20% for senior management. Starting the 1st of January 2021, to avert furloughs later in 2021, Southwest intended to negotiate with its pilot and flight attendant unions for similar cuts. Spirit Airlines was to cut fares by up to 70% and reduce April 2020 capacity by around 5%. Starlux Airlines has suspended all flights until the 2nd of June, and delayed aircraft deliveries of the upcoming Airbus A350s. On the 2nd of June, the airlines resumed its 3 weekly services to Macau. Amid the pandemic, the airline has also delayed its Cebu services launch twice, and indefinitely delayed Okinawa launch. On the 15th of March 2020, Taos Air service for the remainder of the ski season was cancelled due to the pandemic. Tiger Air Australia terminated operations due to the pandemic from the 25th of March 2020. 5 ATR aircraft operated by TrueJet were grounded by lessors due unpaid dues. Turkish Airlines temporarily suspended all international flights starting from the 28th of March. United Airlines announced that it would reduce domestic flight capacity by 10% and international flight capacity by 20% in April 2020. It also secured $2 billion in loans to secure its cash reserves. United later stated on the 15th of March 2020 that it would cut 50% of its flying capacity for April and May 2020. Universal Helicopters, a Canadian helicopter company, announced its closure due to financial insolvency on the 27th of May 2020. Vietnam Airlines announced in March 2020 that it would temporarily suspend all international flights until the 30th of April 2020. On the 5th of May, Virgin Atlantic announced it was cutting 3,000 jobs, retiring all Airbus A340s and Boeing 747s immediately, and quitting London Gatwick Airport. The British government chartered a Wamos Air 747 multiple times to repatriate British citizens in Wuhan, China, and Japan during the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. On the 26th of August 2020, Wings of Lebanon announced that they were to suspend operations, citing the pandemic and the economic situation in Lebanon as the reason for ending operations. Wizz Air announced on the 4th of March 2020 that it would be reducing flights to Italy and adjusting its flight schedule as a response to the 2020 coronavirus pandemic in Europe. WestJet reduced 6,900 out of its 14,000 employees and grounded at least 120 planes. All international flights were cancelled for a month. In July 2020, WestJet retired its entire Boeing 767 fleet due to old age and disruptions caused by the pandemic, in favor of only using Boeing 787 Dreamliners for long-haul routes. It was, however, announced in April 2020 that the commencement of Zip Air would be postponed due to the pandemic. In May, Zip Air announced it would start cargo-only flights of Narita, Bangkok, as its initial route on the 3rd of June 2020, whilst passenger flights are still suspended. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the tourism industry due to the resulting travel restrictions, as well as slump in demand among travelers. The tourism industry has been massively affected by the spread of coronavirus, as many countries have introduced travel restrictions in an attempt to contain its spread. The United Nations World Tourism Organization estimated that global international tourist arrivals might decrease by 58 to 78% in 2020. Leading to a potential loss of 0.9 to 1.2 trillion in international tourism receipts. In many of the world's cities, planned travel went down by 80 to 90%. Conflicting and unilateral travel restrictions occurred regionally. And many tourist attractions around the world, such as museums, amusement parks, and sports venues closed. The United Nations World Tourism Organization reported a 65% drop in international tourist arrivals in the first 6 months of 2020. And air passenger travel showed a similar decline.